Alright guys, it is time to go legendary on my alchemy. Now some things that you might want to consider before doing so. I always take the time to craft a whole bunch of the things that I know I'm going to be going through. This way they're already crafted up at max level. I don't need to worry about re-improving my skill in the meantime. So for me that's enchanting, smithing, things like marksman, so if you need health, magicka, anything like that, go ahead and get them all crafted up right now. Go ahead and unlock all 3 of these. Assuming, you're getting ready to go legendary, you'll have the required level there. But reason being is you can go into your ingredients, collect everything you've ever gotten your hands on, and you can eat each one. It only takes 1 of every, and I've already gone through the process and done this. And guys, that's a time-consuming process, so, yeah. Assuming you've got all your alchemy clothes, go ahead and equip all those. The strongest you can make them, the better, especially, restarting the skill. But then you'll notice everything that you've unlocked is now in this category, and you can mix and match. You can try different combinations. For example, if you want to see, what hanging moss and glow dust does, you can do that, and that's $24.39 for value. Or with chicken egg, that's a little less. Or, with Spriggan, that's a little less. So, 25 right there, Blue Mountain Flower, bam. And you can even try adding a 3rd ingredient from time to time. For example, you see that one makes a little bit stronger potion. Now, I normally don't like to do that. Personally, I prefer to stick to 2-ingredient method because you get more potions out of the deal. Now, that being said, if it really jacks up the value, then you might want to consider adding a 3rd. But, in this case, just another 400 gold. And keep in mind, you can't sell it for that. When you're starting over in alchemy again, these will not have the same value they used to have. Not only that, depending on where your speech skill is, will also dictate what you can sell them for. Okay, now that's an anniversary edition ingredient there, but that's one I would consider doing the 3-ingredient method on. Again, because that really bumps the value up. It almost doubles it. So that being said, guys, I would also consider what else is that Scallon Fin used for? Can it make a 5,000 value in, potion on its own with something else? So there's just lots of things to consider there. For example, there, see, I only knocked off the Blue Mountain Flower, and it only brought the value down 500. So, that's just kind of like my method. I do this with every ingredient. I remember, like, what I start with, and I try to find anything that might really hold true value by going into a 3rd ingredient versus not. See, for example, right there. There's no reason to cook a 3rd ingredient into that because I just found a 2-ingredient combination that does the same thing. Now, folks, I already went through and unlocked all of my crafting specs that I have. I don't have every single ingredient in Skyrim right now, but I do have quite a lot, and especially in an early game setting, guys, this is going to be your selling power. So now that being said, I'm just going to kind of zero in on very specific recipes here that you guys can use, especially from early game on. But I will also go through the list and kind of show you every category and try to pause on it for just a little bit so you can see, what all goes into each one. Now on this one I am missing an ingredient. Normally I use blisterwort and glowing mushroom. Oh, and do not cook with the saber cat teeth. These are needed for house building later on. So I really only use the blisterwort and glowing mushroom for my smithing potion. And keep in mind, some of these are anniversary editions, so this is one that you just won't have in the regular game unless you have that extra content. Same thing with Night Eye here, that's Anniversary Edition content. This one's going to be a two-parter. There's quite a lot to this list here. Same thing with this one. It's going to be a two-parter. Okay, that's another Anniversary Edition. Some real good, strong selling potions that I tend to rely on, especially in an early game setting, just because I can get my hands on a ton of this stuff, you know, very early on. So, damage, magic, or regen, guys, I cook a lot of that. Nightshade, it's just about in every single city and village in Skyrim. Hanging Moss, part of the reason I designed my overall walkthrough the way I did was specifically looking for Hanging Moss environments. Chicken's eggs, you find those all over, every farm, sometimes the cities and villages. Blue Mountain Flower. Now you're going to find tons of Blue Mountain Flower just everywhere anyway, but along walking paths especially. Bear Claws too, but keep in mind you need some of these things for house crafting, so I would try to avoid the Bear Claws at least for the time being. Okay, now this one isn't great, but if you've got excess ingredients anyway, that's a good one to cook up right there, because you tend to run into a lot of skeever tails and juniper berries. Those can be found pretty easily around the Reach area. Fortify Block, again, not super impressive, but if you got a ton of these ingredients anyway, you know, you might want to go ahead and cook those up for that reason. Here's another one you might find you're going to find a ton of ingredients for. And keep in mind, guys, you might find another effect on there, but don't craft the potion with 3 ingredients. Reason being is chances are you can craft the same thing with only 2 ingredients if you go to that category. So notice, you know, it changes from Fortify Carry Weight to Poison of Slow when I add that 3rd ingredient. So you can probably find, you know, a combination that is only Poison of Slow for that same value. Okay, there's another example of one that's not super impressive. But guys, I don't like to use my Blue Mountain Flowers for this. I'd prefer to dump those all into that other one, that Damage, Magic, or Regen, so be mindful of that. You can get a lot more value for the flower if you combine it into these different things here. Fortify Enchanting, guys, I strictly keep this stuff solely for my enchanting potions, and I usually use the Blue Butterfly Wing and the Snowberries for that. Fortify Health, guys. I think this is the most expensive selling potion I've ever found. Absolutely the Giant's Toes. Every single Giant's Toe I have, I put right into these potions for selling. Okay, again, only if I have the excess ingredients to do so, I'll craft a bunch of these. Okay, same thing with these ingredients. Now here's another category. If you're a light armor wearer, this is one you might want to consider crafting some potions for. You know, if you're having trouble just getting too much damage out and about. You know, you can craft a whole bunch of these up. I would normally go for the honeycomb and the skeever tail, you know, because they don't sell good anyway, so it's kind of like, who cares? Okay, here's another one you're going to find a ton of, Red Mountain Flowers. And these are on Solstein, but I don't think that's the best you can craft with that potion, so I'll have to play with that one a little bit. Okay, guys, and here's my Fortify Marksman. Now, normally when I craft these, I use Elves Ear and Juniper Berries. So I'm going to absolutely blow through every single one of those that I have before I go Legendary, just to make sure I've got my hands on a good amount of those potions. And normally I like to save the Canis Root for other purposes. You know, that's a good invisibility potion, I think. Or Paralysis, one of those two. You know, for money. But, you know, in this case, I will probably sacrifice some, if not all of those, to make sure that I get enough Marksman potions crafted. So once again, I have that good, you know, full-strength potion that I can get my hands on, while I'm still working on improving my alchemy skill. Again, guys, only if I have tons of extra ingredients will I go down to something like this. Same thing with the Pickpocket, and same thing with Restoration. Stay away from the small antlers and large antlers, by the way. Those are once again going to be needed for house crafting. Slaughterfish egg and slaughterfish scales also. Those are going to be needed for house crafting. Purple mountain flowers is another thing you're just going to have a ton of. And you know, those grass pods are actually pretty easy to farm, especially on Solstheim. So that might be something else, you know, I'd consider crafting a bunch of. That's a stronger combination there. So yeah, that Frost Miriam, you know, it's not a great big, you can farm a whole ton of that stuff all at once, but it is another option there for you. But look at that one, guys. Boar tusks, you can find a ton of those on Solstheim. They're heavy, but, you know, given that dollar amount, it's worthwhile. And those torchbug thoraxes, you can find them literally everywhere during the night. Okay, that's a good early game seller right there, but that Dragon's Tongue, that's more when you get out east a little bit, heading into the marshland. And then this is one of those rare opportunities, if you do all three, it bumps the value up considerably. You know, I don't know if I would necessarily do it. It would really just kind of boil down to, do I have a bunch of extra ingredients anyway? If yes, you know, I might go ahead and do that just for the little bit of extra value there. Invisibility is another real good early game option. You can get most of these, you know, very early game, especially those Luna Mothwings. They're literally everywhere. When you start running into vampires, yes. Now guys, you know, again, some of these mix and match a little bit. But that Nimroot, that is needed for a quest later on, so I don't normally cook with that unless I've got at least 20. You're going to need 20 for that quest line later on. There's another decent one for, you know, value, if you've got a ton of them. Paralysis, guys, that's another good early game go-getter right there. So that's around Morthal. We haven't been there in my game yet, but there's a ton of those swamp fungal pads. Regenerate health. So this is the one I was thinking of. If you have that Emperor Pearl Moss from Solstheim, and that's right by the giant mushroom, by the way. There's quite a lot of it that grows out there. That's another real good seller right there. Okay, that's another really good one. Dwarven Oil, you can pull a lot of that out of the Dwemer Ruins, so at some point in your game, you're going to have a ton of that stuff. But, you know, in addition to that, you can also do the salt pile here. You can do taproots here. So you have quite a bit of options here once again. Another one that has decent value to it, early game ingredients. Okay, again, not super impressive, but if you got a ton of the ingredients, go for it. That's another good early game opportunity there as well. This is one I'll use a little bit later game, you know, especially when I start getting the numbers built up on some of these. Again, more options here. That will be worth it if you've got, you know, a good number of the things. Poisonous Slow, guys, that's a real good one. When you get to Solstheim, that Tramaroot is literally everywhere. And then, of course, Salt Pail. I just check all the barrels and sacks and everything, and I always find a ton of this stuff. Death Bell is usually, you know, around. Maybe not quite as abundant, but right around east of Solitude, where all the swampland is, you'll find a ton of Death Bell there. More options there. One more thing to consider when you're pre-crafting these potions, you know, before you hit Legendary, is after you hit Legendary and you start recrafting all these dummy potions again, especially if you've got a super suit, you know, that has all 5 pieces for, you know, alchemy on your body, guys, your alchemy stat is just going to go through the roof really, really quickly. So, you know, by the time you're starting to run out of some of these pre-crafted potions, your alchemy stat should be getting pretty high again, and then it won't really be a big deal to recraft more potions at that time. Sure, they might not be quite as strong, at least until you're at level 100 again on alchemy, but, you know, say you get it up to 70, 80 again pretty quickly, it's still going to be a pretty doggone good potion. And the reason we do this is so that we can keep progressing in our overall leveling, but not only that, it gives us perk points back in the immediate. So we can dump some perks into other things we might be working on. And then remember, you've got plenty of potions, you know, held back. So, you know, in the meantime, you can slowly but surely start working your way back up on your alchemy stat. And keep in mind, while you're leveling this, you're also leveling your character, and more perk points will keep coming.